Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Tiny Fit Diva podcast. I'm Kylene Terhune, your host and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. It's my job to help you uncover the hidden causes of chronic health conditions. And today I have a really cool guest. Her book is just super interesting, and I think you're going to learn a lot. So let me give her a quick intro. Dr. Dana Cohen has been successfully practicing medicine in New York City for 15 years, utilizing a distinctive medical approach. Integrative medicine is a boutique, patient-focused area of practice involving an extensive amount of physician-patient communication, interview, and assessment time. Dr. Cohen treats each of her patients from a holistic point of view by evaluating the whole person and not just the specific symptoms or conditions that brought him or her to the doctor's office. She is an expert in bioidentical hormone replacement for men and women, as well as in the treatment of hypothyroidism. And she's the author of the book Quench, Beat Fatigue, Drop Weight, and Heal Your Body Through the New Science of Optimum Hydration. Welcome, Dr. Cohen. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I am just going to ask you so many questions.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I just think this is so interesting. There's so many tidbits in your book that are just fascinating to me. I can only imagine the process of discovering this and researching it yourself and writing the book, how interesting that was for you.
It was very interesting. In fact, shortly after I have a co-author who really introduced me to the subject of structured water, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. And when she started to introduce me to this information and how desert plants hydrate, and they hydrate via gels, and there's this new form of water that's been discovered. And I was like, oh my God, do you want to write this book? I've been searching for my book. And she's like, yeah, yes, I want to do this. And shortly into my researching this subject, I realized, oh my God, water is unbelievably complicated. The H2O molecule, the most simplest molecule, turns out to be incredibly complex. Lots of people don't agree on it. Even the idea of hydration, like nobody knows how to measure it, this low-grade hydration. So yes, I was ready to say, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And I stuck it out, and it's turned out to be very interesting, and it is a fascinating subject.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people know that hydration is important, but one of the things that I thought was really interesting was, I had it highlighted in here, so I'm going to pull it open. We were talking about why we're dehydrated, because I think a lot of times we know that it's important, but I was just talking to someone else on another podcast about hydration and water, and she was talking about sipping through the day versus gulping, and so you're really not hydrating yourself if you're just sipping through the day. So people can think, yeah, I've been drinking water all day long, but in reality, you're not actually hydrating yourselves. And one of the things I thought was really interesting, a little section in your book, you said what we eat, including salt-heavy, moisture-lacking processed food, makes our bodies work harder to metabolize, and a lack of hydrating greens and fruits keeps us dried out, even parched all the time. In addition, this is what was so interesting to me because I never thought about this. In addition, we're ever more exposed to fluorescent lighting, dry heat, and air conditioning. And that's not even considering all the electronic devices we use that further dehydrate us. Like, what?
Yeah. Well,
that's so crazy.
Our environments are different from even 5 years ago. We are living in just desert conditions all the time between, the lights, the lack of movement, anything that's going to raise heat in your body. So our cell phones keeping up to our ears all day long, that heat, the EMF stuff, the electromagnetic radiation stuff, which is controversial, I think is sucking the hydration out of us. But let alone, let's say we take that even out of the picture, the heat from the phones, we're keeping it out near our bodies, we're putting it up to our ears. That in and of itself is hydrating. I think it was Dr. Mercola who had I'm not going to remember the statistic, but from 100 years ago, the amount of EMF exposure is immeasurable, high, immeasurably higher. Like in the, I'm not going to remember, it's a billionth, way more than a billionth, like a trillionth, and whatever 100 times a trillionth is from what we had even 100 years ago, let alone even 20 years ago. So yeah, it's they're all issues, and then the heating in our, and we all have the heat, the air conditioning. We're not living outside, so there's no moisture in our air. There's no and then all the things that we're doing, and then medications. We're all on medications that are not we, but patients are on. When I was doing the research, I found this statistic that there is a list of, I don't know, something like 100 medications from the of people that reported to the FDA of medications that have overtly dehydrated them. And they're things we would never think about. Things like, Prilosec, the purple pill. We know about diuretics. We know Benadryl, all those things. We know they dehydrate us. These are things that you would never even think about. Aspirin, and then some, and you name it, it was on the list of, overt dehydration from these medications. So yeah, there's lots of reasons.
So I mean, people get the general concept that we need to stay hydrated. We're told from a young age, drink water, look at your urine color, that sort of thing. But what are some reasons that people should take hydration seriously that maybe we don't think about?
Okay, so I have found that, so let's also just pull it apart for a second, because we're not talking about overt dehydration where you're vomiting and you need to be hospitalized and put on IV fluids. That doctors are great at. We know what that looks like. That's a known thing. We know how to measure it. We know what it looks like. That's an emergency. We're talking about this day in, day out, low grade, chronic dehydration that I think is affecting almost all of us, and including, I see patients, my elite athlete patients, they even tell me they don't think they drink enough. So this chronic low-grade dehydration, and what I found is that it puts you at risk for chronic illness. So it is the first step in treating and preventing chronic illness. And things that I lay out very good research to show you is it puts you at risk for certain cancers, colon cancer and bladder cancer being the two highest ones on the list. Definitely chronic fatigue, definitely joint pain, fibromyalgia, definitely headaches. We all know that. Everybody knows that headaches is the first thing you should look for is hydration. What else? Urinary tract infections, kidney stones, those are all things we know. But even interesting and really good research is that type 2 diabetes, this chronic low-grade dehydration puts you at risk for type 2 diabetes and even Alzheimer's disease. So when you are starting any kind of health program, this has to be your first step. You need to know how to hydrate properly before you put yourself on any kind of diet plan, nutrition plan. This is where you start, and there's nobody who won't benefit from it.
So let's talk about that, better hydration. You said we can hydrate better. 8 glasses of water isn't doing it. So can you explain what is this better hydration? How do we get the benefits of the water that we do drink?
Okay, so let's start with the discovery of structured water. What is structured water? So we all know that water exists in 3 phases: liquid, ice, and vapor. We now know that there is a 4th phase of water, and it's different. We base a lot of the research that we did in our book specifically based on a researcher, Dr. Gerald Pollack, who's out of Seattle. Really interesting research, and his is a very specific molecule. Not everybody agrees on what the exact structure of structured water is, but many scientists believe that there is some other phase of water. It is this other phase of water that is what's inside of our cells. It's also what's in nature. So it's how water is found in nature. Think about how desert plants hydrate. It's a very simple example. open up an aloe plant. It's gel that sticks out. So that's the idea. It's structured water. We call it gel water. There's lots of names for it, but it is the way that these simple water molecules lay upon each other, how they structure upon each other, that it creates this other kind of water, this other phase of water. And so the idea is it is in that other phase of water that's much better absorbed. It gets it intracellularly better. So the idea of eating your water by eating more plants and vegetables is a very simple sort of gist of the book.
So it's not just, you're not saying necessarily don't drink water, but you're saying combine it with water heavy fruits and vegetables, because then you get that structured version that's more hydrating and more beneficial.
That is one way to get structured water, yes. So we need, we're more like plants than we ever imagined, and new studies are coming out all the time, which is really interesting. So we know that plants get energy from photosynthesis. What does that mean? They need greens, so chlorophyll, they need sunlight, and they need water. And we are very much like that as well. We need sunlight, we need greens, and we need water. So also, a very simple idea, and the gist is have more green smoothies in your diet. That water is already structured, and I know from hundreds of my patients, just by tweaking their nutrition a little bit, by adding more green smoothies, or by adding electrolytes to water in the form of natural salt, or there are lots of electrolytes, supplements on the market now. That's also helping get that water intracellularly. We need fiber to help get that water into our cells, so it almost acts like a sponge. Chia seeds, I know a lot of people who, I'm sure all of your listeners know, when you put water to chia seeds, you see the gel. It forms gel. It makes a gelatinous substance, a mucilaginous substance. So those are all some really good ways of getting that structured water into our cells. And I was going to say earlier, I know from myself and my patients that when you start to change the way that you drink water by eating water, by adding more gel water, you just feel it. You feel it differently. And I had a very, I think I might have said this in the book. I don't remember if we told this story in the book. When I first started this research with Gina, I went to Las Vegas for a conference, and I said, I'm gonna do really well. I'm gonna really hydrate myself. I'm learning about this. I'm gonna drink and drink and drink more water. And these conferences, you sit there for 8 hours a day, all day long. You're inside, literally in the desert in Las Vegas. There's a pitcher of water in front of everybody on the tables, and you're sitting down all day under these horrible lights. It's the worst environment to learn from. And you feel horrible at the end. You're more exhausted than before you even went there. So I said, I'm going to drink. I drank water all day long. And after every single lecture, I'd go and pee. By the end of the day, my pee was crystal clear. There was no color to it. I felt horrible. I was exhausted. My headache. It did nothing to me. I couldn't hydrate. I was, and I know people know this. Like, the more water you drink, sometimes you just can't get hydrated. You start eating and drinking the way that we tell you in the book, you will absolutely notice a difference. You can do it on yourself, and it takes 2 days, 1 day, to even just notice a major difference by eating more fruits and vegetables, by getting more structured watering, by adding electrolytes to your morning water, by front loading your water, doing a big 16 ounces of water first thing in the morning. That's how desert people hydrate. They do gulp their water first thing in the morning, big glasses of water, and so.
Yeah, I thought you had some really cool stories in there. I thought those little historical tidbits were super fascinating. And you were sharing how, like, nomadic people, I mean, they wear black clothes that cover their faces and everything, but it would cause humidity so they could breathe. And they would chug their water at the beginning of the day. And those were some just amazing techniques that I was like, why don't we think about these things? But they knew, like, that's how they would stay hydrated and be able to go. And then they would drink things like camel's milk and goat's milk and things like that, which is a really great source too. So you say in the book several times that it's better to drink 1 bottle of water with an apple than it would be to have 2 bottles of water. So there's a couple reasons for that. You're getting the structured water that allows you to actually be hydrated, but also like you're talking about at the conference and things like that. And with athletes, maybe if you're drinking too much water and you're not also compensating with these other things, the electrolytes and the fruits and vegetables, you can actually wash out or flush out too many electrolytes and cause a problem there too as well, right?
Yeah. So, and the truth is, I see it in not even my athletes. I see it at least once a week. I see laboratory evidence of patients drinking too much water. I see it more often than I ever than I ever even thought about. Because now I'm really interested in it and I'm really on it. And I've always, when their sodium levels are too low, I'll always ask, do you drink a lot of water? And there are people who drink so much water that they're flushing out their electrolytes, and there's real laboratory evidence based on that. So it's not as uncommon as you would think. I think it's way more common than you think. And by adding some electrolytes, we talk about using a real salt or a Himalayan sea salt or Celtic sea salt, it has the full spectrum of minerals and electrolytes. Throwing a little tiny pinch in your water is a really good way of making sure that you're getting those electrolytes that you need and that you're not overdoing it with water. So it's not as uncommon as you think. It's definitely common in athletes who don't know how to properly hydrate and are exercising and then just drinking regular water to a large degree and flushing out those electrolytes that we really need. So it's an issue. And anybody who gets maybe think about leg cramps at night, like little eye twitching, those things, you're probably flushing out too many electrolytes. That's the first place to start. Make sure that you're getting good electrolytes. Some lemon, anything that has minerals in it. So the apple and the water, we don't say it's necessarily important to do that, but we say an apple and a bottle of water is probably more hydrating than 2 bottles of water. From a cellular standpoint, you're getting more of that water intracellularly.
Yeah, you also gave a little, you just almost touched on it there. You gave a little recipe for almost like a morning elixir. And I was like, oh, that's almost exactly what I tell a lot of my clients to do. And I was so excited. So it's like a glass of water, some lemon juice, a little bit of Himalayan salt. Now I haven't added the salt in a long time. And normally I put some apple cider vinegar in it. So I'll have to remember to do the salt. But yeah, that's such a great way. If you do the apple cider vinegar, it stimulates your digestion, has all those added things. But that's awesome. Yeah. So I read that and I was like, yay.
Love it. And so, according to anthropological data, that is how desert people hydrate. They gulp like a huge thing first thing in the morning, because sure is those people do not drink 8 glasses of water a day. They can't get to it, So front load your water. I recommend 16 ounces, a little pinch of sea salt. You don't need a lot. A little squeeze of lemon. You're getting nice minerals in there. It tastes good. I love the apple cider vinegar. So yeah, fantastic. Yeah. That alone, I have to tell you, has changed patients' lives. Mm-hmm. I've had patients calling me and saying, oh my God, I just read your book and I started just the morning drink, not even doing anything else. And they notice a huge difference.
That's amazing.
Easy.
Sometimes it's the smallest things. It's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Can you talk about I think it's so interesting. Can you talk about the impact of the sun and the electrical function of the structured water inside of us? So there was a quote in the book that Dr. Pollack proposed that when light waves reach water, even inside of us at the cellular level, the water molecule splits, resulting in a negative charge, turning water into an energizing battery. I was like, there's so many just really interesting concepts. I just thought that was so interesting because we don't think about it in these terms.
Yeah. And, so that's based on his research. There's been some other research that have come out lately too, which I'll get to in a second. So yeah, sunlight, Dr. Pollack, he calls it easy water. Easy stands for exclusionary zone. So it's hard, it's sort of hard to describe and explain, and it gets really technical, but it's the idea of...
Just plug the book here. Everybody can go read the book.
Thank you. And it's simple. The book is really written for the masses, by the way. It's written for the lay people. This is a book that will help anyone from the elite athlete to the really sick fibromyalgia person who can't walk through the door. Truly, this is the place to start. But so this exclusionary zone is the amount of this space that that doesn't hold particles. Like there's nothing that can get through the space. And it's this idea of that water sort of filters itself, which I think we do a lot in our body, which is also a very interesting concept. When you add sunlight to, or UV light, and specifically far infrared does it greater than any other form of light, but any light will do, including the light that bounces off your desk, because we're all exposed to it. You energize those water cells, and you create a larger easy zone, and from that you're also creating more negative ions, and it holds on to those charges like a battery. So water is not only hydration, it literally is fuel. It produces energy in our bodies, energy in the form of ATP. Those electrons then get moved through a system and give us energy in ATP. So water is not just hydration, it's energy.
That's so cool.
Fascinating.
It is. So what do you say to people who complain about bathroom breaks?
Oh, you know what? I have it is, we are meant to pee every 2 or 3 hours. It's what we're meant to do. And I'm sorry, but you need to get up and go pee.
You need to move anyway, right?
You need to move. And we'll get onto that in a second. We talked about, I think we told the story in the book about the being on an airplane and having to bother the person next to you on a long flight. Too bad, you're doing them a favor. Number one, you're making them get up and move, which we're supposed to, and we have to pee. It's just, it is a thing. I have a lot of patients that work at BlackRock, which is a big financial firm here in New York, and they did something really interesting, and I'm not even sure why they did it. But they moved the garbage cans away from the bottom of their desk. Everybody had a single garbage can. They moved it to a central space. So if you want to throw something away, you have to get up from your desk and go throw it away. And I'm like, bravo, make them get up and move. I'm sorry, it has to be done. And we run into trouble with the elderly and people in nursing homes where they literally can't get up and move that often. And, the truth is, when you eat the way that we ask you to eat, with more fiber and more electrolytes, it balances itself out eventually, so you're not, when you first start drinking a ton of water, you're peeing more often. When you're eating and drinking this way, it is every couple of hours, which we're supposed to do. So long answer for, sorry.
No, I think it's important to touch on, because it's so funny to me sometimes when, for example, I work a lot on gut health with people. And so we talk about poo a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's so funny because they'll be constipated like their whole life, go maybe once a week, and just crazy unhealthy toxicity, right? And so we get things moving, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going like 3 times a day. And I'm like, yeah, that's normal. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You kind of got to get used to this. It's okay to go to the bathroom, people. It's actually a really, really healthy thing.
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
You mentioned earlier about the color of your pee. I just want to really touch upon that, because it is actually probably the best tool that we have to look at hydration function. We don't really, there's nothing you can really, for this low grade chronic dehydration, there's nothing we have. So we want the color of our urine to be straw or light yellow, pale yellow in color. It is actually a good marker to see how well you're hydrated. If it's crystal clear, you're probably overhydrating. If it's dark, it's concentrated. And the only caveat to that is, obviously, if you're taking B vitamins, that can falsely color your urine. So all bets are off in that case.
And I think you had mentioned too, in the morning, it'd be a little darker simply because your body, you have that antidiuretic hormone that's released. And so You're not getting up, hopefully, multiple times in the middle of the night to go to the restroom. And so your body compensates for that. So it's much more concentrated.
Right. And that's also, we detoxify in our sleep. That is the highest point of how our body detoxifies. So you're
don't freak out if it's a little bit.
No, the morning urine is concentrated. It's supposed to be. But during the day, you want it this nice light pale yellow in color.
So let's talk about movement specifically, there was a quote in there I thought that was super interesting about fidgeting, extending your life. So you had a chapter on movement, and it said movement. And again, it's such a simple concept. Movement moves hydration down to the cellular level. I mean, that's such a basic, I mean, if you think about it, it's like, well, duh, right? I mean, movement moves hydration.
It's instinctual, right?
Right. Yeah. If you bring it to our focus, and all of a sudden we think, well, of course. So, and then you mentioned a 2012 study was shown that fidgeting protected your lifespan or your life. So that's a pretty big deal. So Can you talk about the importance, you call them in your books micro movements, I believe. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I want to take a step back and talk about a discovery, gosh, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago now. This French, I believe he was a plastic surgeon, decided to put a camera under a living person's skin and look at the fascia. Fascia is that connective tissue that surrounds every cell, every organ in our body. It's this webbing, this connection all over. And we're hearing now it's a buzzword. Everybody's talking about fascia. Prior to him doing that, fascia had never been looked at before, only under dried, desiccated cadavers. So it would be literally when you were dissecting a cadaver, you'd open it up and you'd go through it, you'd get rid of it and look at the organs. If you go back and look at this footage, his name is Guimberto. Fascinating. I think it's called Living Fascia. You see that fascia is a delivery system for fluid and hydration, which is mind-blowing because we've only ever thought that fluid and hydration gets delivered via blood and lymph. It's a completely new system that's been identified. So the idea of you have to move your joints to lubricate them, we've all said before, we now really understand why. So it's fascia. Actually, this movement, this is a micro movement. So looking up and down, your head is acting like a hydraulic pump. Fluids going in, being pulled out, literally physiologically from the fascia. Fascia, by the way, is also an electrical conducting system. So it also conducts electricity throughout the body. It's a whole new system. And, truthfully, the body workers are the ones who really know this better than anything. I had a massage therapist once who used to say, I'm a blood mover. And she knew enough to say that, blood has things in it that we don't even know everything about blood. You get blood to an area that is damaged or hurt. There are healing factors, things that we don't even know. Nobody knows. So she was right in some sense, but it's the fascia that you're moving. So we lay out very, very simple micro movements that when you get up in the morning, you should move, like just sort of get everything moved, do that head bobbing first thing in the morning. When you're even laying in bed, you're getting fluid in and out of your brain. And that's beside doing your exercise. We don't talk about exercise in the book. There are people who know way better than I do, exercise physiologists, that kind of thing. But these micro movements are important because we're sitting all day long. We sit in our chairs. We don't get up and move. We don't get up and walk. We don't move our joints. So that's the story behind movement. It's a really interesting concept. Yes, it is instinctual, but now there's real sort of science behind it, and to understand why, and hopefully motivate people to do a little bit better of even sitting at your desk or sitting in traffic, of things that you can do. Like you're doing when you do these spinal twists, you're literally wringing out fluid like a sponge, and then everything sort of goes back in.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, when you do anything like in a yoga practice or anything, they'll talk about that. They'll say like it's wringing out your organs and it's detoxifying and stuff. So it's really interesting how sometimes there's like this traditional practice or these older ways of thinking about things. And then later on we have technology and science and studies that kind of end up backing up this, what I guess you'd say was a theory at that point. But they just knew it worked, for whatever reason, they were like, it works. So this is what it is.
I love it. That's the whole idea of even the anthropological evidence, everything that we sort of lay out. If I had to do it differently, I would definitely be an anthropologist undergrad So fascinating, isn't it? Like what
I
we
know.
learn.
Yeah. You look back and you're like, well, I could have done this, but you ended up in the place that you needed to be.
Yes.
Um, so this is kind of a random question. I don't know. This is way out there, but we're talking about the electricity and movement generating that electricity. And in this case, I mean, electricity sometimes sounds harsh when we're talking about our body, but it's an important thing. It's a good thing in terms of, energy and production and hydration.
Yeah.
But, is that maybe why we're talking about micro movements? Is that why maybe sometimes in certain diseases you see twitches and jerks? Is that maybe the body's way of trying to produce energy or get some of these functions moving or circulation or hydration going? I mean, would that even be, it's kind of an odd connection, but I was reading it and I was thinking Parkinson's is so shaky. And I was wondering if that had any connection there.
I can't say for sure. Everything I've given you is, I was actually super careful at how I laid out the book and what I've said, and I back up everything in there. I can't say for sure. What I can say for sure is that with any chronic illness, this is where you need to start. And then sort of go from there. The twitching in certain diseases, I think about like muscle fasciculations. It's I think there's some genetic ones, so it's hard to say. It's a really hard question to answer, and I can't give you any kind of definitive answer, except that it certainly wouldn't hurt to start here.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I was curious when I was reading that. It just came to mind. I thought I would ask.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting.
So what is beauty water? You talk about beauty water, and I would like to know what your favorite addition is.
So it depends on what season we're in. So beauty water, we call beauty water basically like water with berries just sitting in the water, like a really simple one ingredient thing that you can throw in your water that's going to change the structure of it a little bit, right? So, and you don't need a blender, you don't need to add electrolytes. It's just a simple beauty water. So, an easy one is blackberries in water. This summer I did a lot of, I did some prickly pear infused water, but that actually required a little bit of work because you have to blend it, you have to strain it, so forget that one. But I did do a lot of prickly pear infused water, which I learned when I was in Arizona. So let me go back to my original story about being in Las Vegas when I drank that water all day long and couldn't get hydrated. The next conference I was at was in Arizona, and those people know how to hydrate. So in every hotel, in everything, they had those big water coolers that had infusions of like lemon, lime, citrus, and then they had prickly pear infusions. That's where I learned it. So, and then I drank that water all day long, and it was a very different experience. By the end of the day, I was energized. I wasn't peeing every hour. My urine was a normal color. A really good experiment. So that was the end of that story. So other beauty waters that I like, and everything has a different feel. Lychee fruit. That's what I was going to tell you. I did a lot of lychee fruit this summer. Lychee is a definite seasonal fruit. It's so delicious. You open up the little lychees. I don't know if you've ever had it. They're like these little round sort of fruits from Southeast Asia. And in fact, going to the anthropology, there are these ancient Chinese princesses that used to eat them for their skin. And so lychee is really good for your skin, really good it helps decrease body fat, specifically around the middle, so midsection body fat. Lots of good reasons to eat lychee. One bad reason is it does have a lot of sugar in it, so you do need to be a little bit careful with how much lychee you eat, and it is seasonal. So I like lychee fruit in my water. What else? Berries, strawberries, blueberries. I'll do frozen berries in the winter. Pomegranate seeds are great. I'll buy them already like out of the thing from Whole Foods in a container and just take a spoonful and throw them in the water. Easy.
That's so fun. So basically, there's no excuse if you don't like plain water.
Right.
You can flavor it a little bit, and it's more beneficial for you anyway. And you give lots of options and ways you do smoothies in your book. You get a lot of recipes at the end of the book. So if somebody's wondering like, well, how do I really incorporate this? There's a lot of information, not only in how she explains it, but also in recipes at the end. But you had also mentioned rose jelly, which stuck out to me because when I'm thinking about gut health, you said rose jelly is something that is traditionally used to heal the mucous membranes in the gut. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to check that out.
That's a great beauty water. Rose petals in your beauty water, like
Yeah.
that in and of itself is a really.
I'm so totally gonna have to try that.
Yeah.
So what else would you like people to know about the Quench program or the book in general?
It's really easy.
Yeah.
It is. We designed it. It's 5 days. You can do it during your work week. There's nothing hard about it. I want to just, I do want to tell you the difference between smoothies and juicing, because you mentioned smoothies a second ago. We define smoothies in the book as a blended vegetable or fruit, as opposed to an extracted vegetable or, so that's the juicing is when you extract the juice from a fruit or a vegetable, leave behind the fiber. A smoothie, the difference is it's not like yogurt, ice cream. It's a smoothie to us is a blended or macerated vegetable and fruit, plus or minus fruit. Obviously, the sugar stuff depends on who you're talking to. If there's a sugar problem, a little less fruit, and you have to work with that yourself. So smoothies, 5-day program, Monday through Friday, really easy. It should be the first step that anyone should take before embarking on any kind of diet program, whether it be keto, and especially keto. I don't know if you have a lot of keto listeners. I certainly do. I'm somebody who used to work for Dr. Atkins. That's how I started this whole field 20 years ago. So I have a lot of keto patients. That diet in and of itself is a known dehydrating diuretic. So you have to make sure you know how to properly hydrate before you start on something like that. So it's easy. Anyone can benefit. Try it out.
That's awesome. And I think you've given us so much to think about, but also the tools and a lot of amazing recipes. And I know when I travel, I usually try to chug water. But now I'm going to be thinking, well, maybe I should bring some pomegranate seeds so I can pour it into my water. Or maybe I should do this a little bit differently or bring an apple with me in my purse. And that way it will help me stay ahead. Chia seeds help me stay ahead of the game a little bit. So I appreciate that because I hate that when you travel and you just feel so gross. So
yeah.
That's just an amazing tip. So everybody go out and buy her book. It's called Quench, Beat Fatigue, Drop Weight, and Heal Your Body Through the New Science of Optimum Hydration. Is this on Amazon or do we need to go to your website?
Amazon. I don't even have it on my website. So Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, anywhere, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. And you can check out my website, though. It's drdanacohen.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing and talking with us today. I learned a lot and I appreciate you being here.
Kylene, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.